Hello everyone, we're going to be looking at the big three for technical analysis. Then we're going to go into some altcoins, ICX, VEN, NEO, OMG, and XLM. We're going to wait a couple minutes here for some people to file in, and then we'll get right to it, and we'll wrap it up at the end with some Q&A, and I'll tune into the YouTube world and see what's going on over there. So just going to wait a minute here. We're going to look at all the weekly time frames, the daily time frames, and then zoom into the shorter term time frames. And I do like to start my morning every single day with that kind of analysis, the broader picture, the longer term, and then zooming in each time frame, giving different clues as to what to expect for that day. So the weekly time frames are giving us a nice outlook on this bounce, and the vast majority of cryptocurrencies at this space, the weekly time frame is forming what I feel is going to be a longer, drawn out equilibrium pattern. And that is, I talked about it a bit in the last video, but that's something I'm looking forward to, because while it will lead to some decreased volatility in the short term, while these ranges tighten up, once they break, they will be some very nice signals to act on, and very nice signals to act on for longer term swing traders. So that's what we're going to be looking for. So just patiently waiting a bit longer here. And we'll start it at 2 p.m. Eastern here, so a couple more minutes. Let's see where everybody's from. Hungary. Dealing with the delay here, but we'll see where people are from in the YouTube world. Estonia, New York City, Orlando, Switzerland, Scotland. And now they all come pouring in. Denmark, Amsterdam, Charlotte, Alaska, Texas, Netherlands, Belgium, Cancun, Brazil, Australia, Philippines, Holland, US, Detroit, Minnesota, Tennessee, California, Seattle, Croatia, Turkey, Belgium, Vancouver, Costa Rica. We're all over the place. And that's the best part about cryptocurrency. If you don't have any gear and you can afford it, just a shirt or something, I promise you, you will make friends with strangers around the world, in terms of just striking a common chord and having a topic of conversation that you can instantly bond with someone over. And, people talk about, oh, you don't want to wear those kind of things and make yourself a target. Yeah, you don't want a Lambo with a Bitcoin license plate, but if you wear a crypto shirt, I don't think you're going to get kidnapped off the side of the street. Personally, I'm not living my life in fear that way. And, just a shirt like that, if you wear an Ethereum shirt, there's only going to be a few people who know what that is, and recognizing those people is a lot of fun in my experience. So let's get into it now. I guess it's not 2 p.m. We'll be fair because we said 2 p.m. Don't want to start early and have people missing out. And as far as the YouTube comments goes, I'm not going to be paying attention to them while I am giving my analysis. And then once done analysis at the end, I will start reading all the chat room and some questions there. All right, it's 2 p.m. Let's start. So the weekly time frame, just want to give a general outline as I've been doing in these videos, because I am looking at a longer term equilibrium pattern to play out. I have estimated visually, and again, it is certainly only an estimation, that this bounce can make its way up to 14,000. That's a general target that I would have, looking for a lower high to form. And again, we have Ethereum, which we'll look at in just a moment, but we have a nice example to be looking at in terms of what a weekly equilibrium pattern looks like. So I will be looking for a lower high and an equilibrium pattern to form on Bitcoin. It could take even a month to reach that high for all we know, but that is the general area that I'm going to be looking for. And then we'll look for a pullback and a higher low, perhaps down to the $10,000 range. Again, that is looking a bit into the future. A lot of people use Elliott Wave, Filicone, and a lot of other YouTubers. That's generally a significant part of their analysis. And I personally don't prescribe to Elliott Wave, but I do recognize that a lot of what I do in terms of my own analysis and my own observations and interpretations of technical analysis, a lot of that does share some similarities with Elliott Wave. So I'm not going to knock Elliott Wave, but in terms of utilizing it, I find that, the way that I do things easier for me, and that's what's been working for me. So I am not an Elliott Wave prescriber, but I am well aware that a lot of what I do does share a lot of commonalities with Elliott Wave. So that is lower high that I'm looking for. But again, I'm not going to be making trades. I'm not going to be, entering here and saying, I'm expecting we're going to go to 14,000. I'm just going to hold until we do that. That is not the kind of trader that I am. I am the short-term trader that's going to act on short-term signals. So here on the daily time frame, again, the higher lows are still very much intact. We have our higher low here on the daily, and this is a red candlestick here. It's an inside bar. With my general way of doing things, I do not view inside bars as higher lows on those time frames. So while I could go in and zoom into the hourly time frame and find a nice solid support here at 8,393, as far as the daily chart is concerned, the last higher low that we have formed, in my opinion, is down here at 7,851, which is why in my videos I've been saying how we're in so many scenarios where best case scenario, because we're either going to get healthy consolidation overnight or we're going to get bullish continuation. And so far, it's been a lot of bullish continuation and not so much healthy consolidation. We've had brief consolidation, but it hasn't been significant at this point. So where we stand on this daily chart right now on Bitcoin, the video that I said in yesterday, ideal scenario is we back test these exponential moving averages and then see continuation and get a bullish cross of these moving averages. And we can see that the last time we had a bullish cross of these exponential, and again, these are the 12 and 26 period that are automatically on GDAX. That's why I use those levels, because so many people have to, by default, look at that chart on GDAX that has these exponential moving averages. But just the last time that it crossed was when we went from 4,000 up to 20,000. So not saying that's going to happen again, but that's a very bullish development that the bulls would love to see happen. So where we stand right now, we still haven't consolidated anytime recently. Again, this is a higher low every single day on this bounce. So the bounce started with our higher low on the daily. Every single day since then has been a higher low, which is why I don't see a period of a higher low on the daily time frame in terms of consolidating and establishing a clear level, because every single day has just continued the bullish move where we got the higher high, breaking the top of this bounce, and the bulls have been loving the follow through ever since we broke $9,090. So again, consolidation has occurred on the 4-hour time frame. It hasn't really occurred on the daily since we did break to those higher highs, and this chart could pull back to $9,000 and still be just fine in terms of a higher low forming on the daily chart. Obviously, the bulls don't want to see that, but that could happen and still maintain an uptrend on this daily chart. So where we stand, we had an equilibrium pattern highlighted in the video yesterday. Our high of the bull move, our low of consolidation. We had a lower high and a higher low. This was the equilibrium pattern that we were watching as we headed into overnight last night here on the East Coast in the US. And I was surprised that we made a bull break. That was a very good sign for the bulls to break 10,900 and see continuation. Right now, we do have a double top at the top of this bull move, 11,300, 11,274. That's close enough for me to consider that a double top. But what we're looking at here on the 4-hour time frame, anything above 10,300 is a higher low. So the same thing as I was just talking about on the daily, we could pull back on this 4-hour chart to 10,600 and still be just fine in terms of a higher low pattern for these bulls. So bulls are remaining in control. We have the bull MAC decross. Here, if we see a bull break and continuation, we do have a bull MAC decross on the 4-hour that's closing in. You could make the argument that we could be forming a cup and handle pattern. It's too early in my opinion, but the start of the pattern is there in terms of the right side being lower than the left side, unable to break resistance, healthy consolidation in a handle pattern, and then a breakout. That's a possibility of a pattern I'm keeping an eye on. But all in all, we have a clear resistance level as we head into tonight. We know the bulls are still maintaining full control. The daily chart is not in consolidation mode yet. We would have to clearly break these supports established on the 4-hour time frame for the daily chart to see some consolidation. So as far as I'm concerned, these bulls are still in full control. And again, I had a neutral standpoint heading into yesterday and saying, okay, once this 4-hour equilibrium pattern breaks, I'm waiting until that happens before I make any actions. We could see a bullish entry on a bull break, and the bullish entry would have led to $374 to the upside. Or if we see a bear break, I'm going to wait for hourly oversold conditions. So bulls got the break. Let's see the hourly time frame. Still healthy consolidation. Again, there's our little double top, and bulls still forming higher lows on the hourly. We'll see if we form an equilibrium on the hourly, but bulls could give this resistance level another test tonight, and let's see where the resistance is going to be if we break it. After 11,300, I'm looking up at a pretty key level of 11,695, and why I'm picking out this level is, let's get rid of some of these lines just so it's clear. This was a bounce attempt back when we had another daily equilibrium pattern that broke bearish, but this was a bounce attempt that had a double top. and we had the top of 11,690 and 11,695. So we can round and call that 11,700 is the next major resistance level for Bitcoin after 11,300. And that is a level that when I saw that double top form, I can remember back in late January, when that double top formed, that was a red flag to me that we were no longer, or that we were likely to see a bearish break of that pattern. And I can remember that significantly shifted, obviously, when we continued to dump down. That significantly shifted the bounce attempt back to all bear. But this bounce attempt, and we've been noticing, that's the best part about these YouTube channels, having every single video I've ever made, public, the fact that we could see back down here, the volume was standing out and letting us know that we had some considerable bounce opportunity in terms of maybe this is the bottom because of the amount of volume that we saw on this bounce attempt comparative to the previous bounce attempt. And obviously we've gotten a lot of follow through at this point. So again, the weekly time frame is going to be very interesting for me over the next few months on all of these cryptocurrencies as we're about to look at all their weekly time frames. That, in my opinion, is going to be something very worthwhile to watch. And let's now look at Ethereum next, because I want to point out why Ethereum's equilibrium pattern on the weekly time frame was such a beautiful pattern to be looking at. So again, here's the high, here's the low of the pullback. If we were to form a weekly equilibrium pattern, I believe I said I'd be looking for a move on Ethereum up to about 1100 or so. And right now, let's look back at that equilibrium pattern that developed all through. Let's see, we had our high back in June, and the equilibrium pattern got its bull break in November. That is literally a 5-month equilibrium pattern. And this happens in stocks as well. Baidu comes to mind, BIDU, had a very long 1.5-year drawn out weekly equilibrium pattern. And once it broke, it was a beautiful signal for a longer term play. So here we have our high, low of consolidation, lower high, higher low. Here's another lower high. And we were watching this, again, once the lower high formed on this weekly time frame, we said, okay, this is an equilibrium setup, and we're going to play within it. And once we did have the ability to play within it because there's still plenty of range within these levels, but once it broke, and once we got this break of 347, that was the clear bull signal, and it saw a huge move to the upside. So in my opinion, if you are a believer that cryptocurrency is going to hit new all-time highs, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, everybody, if you think we're going to hit new all-time highs in 2018, in my opinion, you're looking for these equilibrium patterns to form on the weekly time frame for the first half of 2018, and then you're looking for a bull break of these equilibrium patterns in the second half of 2018. And that's, again, more of a longer-term perspective than I give. I don't like to make predictions. I like to react to technical analysis and make my trading decisions based on those reactions. But just in terms of if I were forced to give some kind of outlook, and hopefully we'll come back to this video in 5 months and say, we saw the setup coming and now we're waiting on the break. But again, looking for equilibrium patterns on all of these cryptocurrency names to take place and to tighten up over the next 2 to 3 months. Let's get some shorter term on Ethereum. So again, the higher low on the daily time frame is a very clear established level of 780, and we have more of a clear higher low than Bitcoin does. And what I mean by that is this consolidation that just occurred right now broke the daily higher low pattern in terms of every single candlestick seeing a higher low. That changed. So to me, this is our new higher low on the daily of 909.10. And just to check back in on Bitcoin on the daily chart, we don't have that higher low because we never broke the daily higher low pattern every single candlestick. So there's a bit of a difference there between Ethereum and Bitcoin. That's our new higher low of 909.10. Bulls ideally want to hold that level and see a bull break and continue by breaking over 983, the top of this move. So just looking at it on the 4-hour time frame, we had an equilibrium pattern here as well, same as Bitcoin did yesterday. Our high, low, lower high, higher low just barely, almost a double bottom, and then a lower high just barely, pretty much a double top. And we did break over that double top of 950, but we didn't have much follow through. So what the situation that we still have on Ethereum is it's the weakest of the big three. There's no doubt about that at this point. And it's been that way for about a week at this point. And it's something I'm keeping an eye on because, as we know, oftentimes in the cryptocurrency space, we see cycles and we see an individual name run, and then we see a secondary a run, where the funds leave that individual name and it starts to slow down a little bit, and then it transfers over into a different coin. So I am keeping an eye on Ethereum for that purpose, but I'm also not going to let my, a potential bullish bias or, hoping that the bulls see continuation, I'm not going to let that affect the potential of bearish patterns. If we pull back here, this is a very clear bearish reversal head and shoulders pattern on the 4-hour time frame setting up with our left shoulder our head, our right shoulder, and this is the neckline. Again, you can see pretty much 4 tests of this support line. I'm looking at a range between 910 and 912, where we have bounced off of this many times. If that level breaks on Ethereum, I would be very comfortable taking a short. Now, I don't short because GDAX does not allow that, and I'm comfortable with the GDAX exchange right now. But if you were looking short, or if you were looking to protect bullish positions, that is a very clear support level and a must hold in the short term. Again, if that level breaks, it's not game over on the bounce on the daily time frame. That's just the ideal level for the bulls to hold to remain their strongest. So that's what it looks like on the 4-hour time frame for Ethereum. Let's just compare to Bitcoin, because I am always making comparisons to Bitcoin. And I can see that that pattern is not really anywhere near similar to what we're seeing right now on Bitcoin. It would be very hard for me, and it would be a stretch to draw any kind of head and shoulders pattern right now. So it is definitely a different setup on Ethereum for that reason. And we have to be cautious of that key support, the must hold levels in the 909 to 911 range. Checking out on the hourly, topping out there in the 950 range. But really what I'm looking at is the 4-hour time frame. That's going to be my guide on all of these names into tomorrow. And I'll look at the shorter term time frames if I want more details. But in terms of the pattern that we should be watching in the short term over the next couple of days, it's on the 4-hour in my opinion. So Litecoin weekly chart is setting up for an equilibrium pattern better than anybody else due to the magnitude of the volume on the strength of this bounce. We have our all-time high, the low of the pullback. I would be looking for a lower high to form on this pattern, somewhere around the $275 range. And again, equilibrium pattern is the most likely pattern to form here. News could change it. If we have bearish FUD news, that could change it. Or bullish news. You know, if Litecoin partners with Amazon or something, these charts are going to go out the window in terms of hype and momentum taking over. But, you know, barring those situations, I do believe that we are going to see some nice tightening patterns. And we have to keep in mind that as traders, as if this is what we see happening over the next couple of months, we have to recognize that trading opportunity is going to decrease as these weekly equilibrium patterns tighten up. So if we do see a bull bounce continue, and then we see a lower high and start to pull back, and then we form a higher low, I'm going to scale back my trading even more and say, okay, there are going to be trading opportunities within these ranges, but I know that they're going to be declining because the volatility and volume is declining. And then it'll be go time once we see these clear tight patterns break, because all of these traders are going to be acting on it. And all of these YouTube personalities like myself and people that are going to be watching this pattern, if that is how it ends up playing out, are going to be sounding the bugle once we get a clear break. And it could be a bear break, absolutely. But once that clear break does occur, it will be very significant. So again, I am looking a bit further out, and that is what I'm looking for to happen. So looking on the daily chart for Litecoin, we have begun consolidating. And if this is the higher low for Litecoin, that is extremely strong in terms of the very brief consolidation after the breakout that we've seen. So if 212.45 can hold, that is a very impressive sign for the bulls. If not, we have the exponential daily supports, which have already crossed bullish, to be watching for a support level to be found. But in terms of the daily higher low, the last one, aside from counting 212.45, is all the way down at 142.26. So even if 212.45 breaks, there is a lack of immediate support right nearby because of the magnitude and the speed at which we broke out. We didn't establish support on the way up. But I would be looking for a daily higher low to form in the upper $100 range, even if we do break 212.45. So in order for the daily chart to shift back to bearish on Litecoin, that's not happening anytime soon. And in my opinion, it would have to require a higher low to form, a lower high, and then a lower low to reverse that trend. So where we stand, short term, 212.45 key support, resistance 237.72 is the highest price that we've seen on this move. So what does it look like on the 4-hour? Do we have a head and shoulders pattern? We don't, just because the left side is higher here than the head would be. But the psychology of the pattern is the same in the sense that this support level is pretty key. 212.45, 213, two levels that we bounced off of, because if it breaks, there's a lack of support in the immediate nearby range. But look how tight we're getting on this 4-hour time frame. We're going to see a very clear break of this tightening pattern sometime in the next 2 days on Litecoin. And again, I love tightening patterns because when they break, it is extremely clear. It doesn't matter if you do fibs or Elliott wave or whatever your technical analysis style is. When you see a tight pattern and a clear bull break and the volume associated with that break on all of us traders acting on it, you get a more magnified move. And again, that's why I feel that crypto bounce the past 5 days has been significant, because that clear daily higher low and higher high is what a ton of analysts were looking for. So very tight range. Right now, the range that I'm watching is 212.45 support, and key resistance is 228.98. We can call that 229. That's the tight range. If we get a bull break of 229, I would expect that we are going to see continuation and a break of 237 and see follow through up into the 240s. And if we see a bear break of 212, that tells us the daily consolidation is underway. And then we'll be looking for hourly oversold conditions to potentially be making entries. On any bear breaks, that's the case for the big three. Bear breaks of the 4-hour patterns, we're going to look for hourly oversold conditions to be making any entries and not rushing things, because a clear bear break, we could see that carry over for some time. So that's where we stand on the big three. 4-hour timeframes has the clearest picture. Going to continue monitoring the weekly timeframes for the next few months. Always monitoring the weekly timeframes. Let's now look at some of these altcoins, and then I'll get into some questions. So we're going to look at ICX BTC on Binance, and then VEN on BTC is Binance as well. Then we're going to be looking at NEO on Bitfinex and OMG on Bitfinex, and we'll wrap it up with XLM, which is on Bittrex. Just want to let you know what exchanges these are on. So we're going to start on the weekly time frame here as well. Again, keeping an eye out for the potential of an equilibrium pattern, because that is the most common pattern to form on trading in general. And I just had someone send me a chart image of the S&P 500 going all the way back to the 1930s. And there was a really nice long-term equilibrium pattern that took place over almost decades. And then once it made a clear bull break, there was a very significant bullish market follow through. But it was really cool to see, a very long-term pattern on the entire market from decades ago fitting into the psychological patterns that we still see today. So we have our low, our high, and again, have to keep in mind that just because this is the start of the trading on TradingView doesn't mean that the coin was not trading before data was started to being collected for these charts. So something to keep in mind, this isn't all of the history that there is on some of these names. So we have our all-time low here on this chart, the all-time high, and now the bulls are looking for their higher low. And right now they are really hoping that 3799 can hold, and that can be our higher low. In my opinion, it would be a pretty big red flag if that is not our low and we do break down to lower lows, because that would give back a lot of this move. Right now, we're giving back about 55, 60% of this bull move. And again, some people use fib retracements for this kind of visualization, but I can just roughly look at the size of the move and see how significant the percentage pullback is. And I don't need exact numbers, but I'm looking down at 3799 as a very important support level. And the daily chart is showing me that we are continuing to reject from exponential resistances. We saw that trouble that Bitcoin had getting over these exponential resistances when it was making its attempt. Let's look at it real quick. Again, always comparing everything to Bitcoin. 1, 2, 3, 4 bounces rejecting from exponential resistance before the bulls finally got over it. So now we're looking at ICX rejecting and struggling at these levels. And the key support here was 4303, and that broke. So the bulls were attempting a higher low. It was a real tight pattern that got a bull break and didn't see any follow through. So this was a bit of a fake out. The bull break of 518 should have seen some nice follow through. And the fact that it was left with a big upper wick of profit taking, look at the commonality here in terms of these candlesticks. Upper wick of profit taking, every single bull attempt shows those upper wicks. We do have a little bit of some bullish lower wicks, but the upper wicks of profit taking are certainly outweighing the amount of lower wicks. So that tells me there is more selling pressure than there is buying pressure, and now breaking this level and heading down towards the low of the dump is confirming that. So I look at this daily chart and I say, okay, the bears still have control. The bulls have to prove themselves, and they have not done a good job of proving themselves if they are not forming higher lows and higher highs and getting over exponential resistance. So the bears have favor on ICX BTC right now. And of course, some of that can be due to the strength of Bitcoin still holding up on this breakout. But if we see a break of 3799, it's a red flag, and the bulls need a break of 537 in order to try and turn this daily trend around. VEN BTC on Binance already has its higher low established, so it is a little bit further along and a little bit more confidence building. And again, look at the amount of the pullback compared to the size of the bull move. That's about a third pulling back compared to the bull move, not as significant as ICX is. So there's our higher low. 42867 is now the must-hold level. If I'm in any kind of position, day trader, swing trader, doesn't matter. I am exiting if that level breaks personally. That's just a clear enough level that that's what I'm going to act on. But the bulls still have the follow-through in their favor as they are up near the high of the bounce, which right now is at 6.0006 if we round just a bit. And again, we're looking at the potential for a weekly equilibrium pattern. Our high, our low of consolidation, we're looking for a lower high to form. And ideally, the bulls would like to see that be in the mid-6s, get up to the 6.5 range for a bit more follow-through. And then we'll be looking for a higher low and continued tightening pattern on this equilibrium. So the daily chart, the higher lows on the daily to be watching, we have one here at 4.6 and we have one here at 5.03. And if we lose 5.03 without being able to break 6, that is a clear bear break. It will be a lower high or a double top, and then a loss of the higher low pattern on the daily, and that will put the bears back in control. So the daily key support, 5.03, should not be disregarded because the bulls really need to hold that level. They are liking the volume, increasing bull volume, and then decreasing bear volume, and then another increase in bull volume. So still holding on for these bulls. If we break 5.03, that's a big red flag. NEO USD, that is on Bitfinex. So same thing, equilibrium pattern. You can see all across the cryptocurrency space, this is the potential pattern that is forming. We will look for a lower high to form just visually. I would look for a lower high in the mid 140s. We have a resistance level up at 169.50 to be watching. And we are looking at the daily chart. Can the bulls continue this bounce? We have a higher low now. The clear higher low previously was 94.29. And now the higher low is here at 121.20. Bulls want to see a break for continuation by getting over 138.45. That's the range that we're watching. And if we look on the 4-hour time frame, very similar double top to Bitcoin in the sense that we couldn't break that resistance. We're seeing healthy consolidation. No red flags right now. I'm looking at support of 124 even and 121.20 as the levels that need to hold for these bulls. So this is a chart, NEO here, that still favors the bulls, just like Bitcoin still favors the bulls. You can see the similarities here. And just to, again, reference back, it's almost the same chart on the daily time frame for NEO USD. And again, this is NEO USD comparative to Bitcoin USD. So bulls in control, 4-hour support to be watching. Ideally, the bulls would look great if they could hold 132.66, but as long as 124 holds, that's all the bulls are majorly concerned with in the short term. OMG USD on Bitfinex as well. So again, same pattern. We have our high, low of the pullback. We're looking for a lower high to be set. Just visually, I'd be looking at that around the $20 range. And then we would look for a higher low on the daily to form somewhere around the $12 range. And again, every single week that we get more information, it's going to be a bit easier in terms of getting some clear estimated guesses on what to be looking at for this equilibrium pattern. And as long as the volume keeps dropping off on these individual names, that's going to be a signal for tightening ranges and very common for the equilibrium pattern setup. So if we get, let's see, we have a weekly inside bar currently forming. The week just rolled over, so many days left in trading. Daily chart, very similar to Bitcoin. We have our higher low all the way down here. Higher low is down at 1084, and now the bulls are trying for another higher low here at 1602. And resistance is the top of the move at 1860, and that's the range that we're watching, the 4-hour chart. Again, very similar to Bitcoin. We have our top of the bounce, our pullback, our lower high just barely, and the bulls trying to remain in control. All of these names, well, I shouldn't say all of them, NEO and OMG and Bitcoin, all three of them are giving the psychological setup of a cup and handle pattern. If this consolidation stays healthy, lower wicks is a great sign. Again, left side, consolidation, unable to break on the right side, healthy handle a pullback, potential bull flag is what I look for on that handle, and then continuation. So that's something that we're going to look for overnight. That's best case scenario for the bulls if we can get this bull break of continuation on what is the psychological setup of this cup and handle pattern. And last, we'll wrap it up here with XLMUSD, and hasn't really followed through on its bounce as much as these other two names that we just looked at. So we're going to put our levels here. Make sure your magnet's on if you want it to be to get these nice tight levels. So the key support is down at 258. That's a must-hold level. And on the daily chart, how does it look compared to Bitcoin? Certainly very similar. We have a higher low here of consolidation of 3412, and the bulls are trying to form another higher low here, and that's up at 412, a little double bottom, actually multiple bottoms at 408, 412. So that's a key level of support, and we zoom in on the 4-hour time frame and say, how important is this support level? And it doesn't really seem... That's an ideal level that the bulls want to hold. And there's a little bit of fake out here. So that's because of the lack of liquidity. And this is a nice example where we have a higher low here that the bulls ideally wanted to hold of 426. That level has been broken, but it's only by big significant wicks that get bought up. So that tells me that let's try that again. That tells me that this is a more illiquid name and that market sell orders push the price down quickly and the bulls are recovering. But a little bit of dollar volume goes a long way in terms of taking out support levels and potentially taking out resistance levels as well. So just in the short term, I'm looking at 461 as a key resistance. and key support is 4155. That's the range that we find ourselves in. Again, you could draw the potential of a Head and Shoulders reversal pattern here as well. And one note that I want to make on Head and Shoulders reversals patterns is I find that they're more useful when the left neckline is higher than the right neckline. Because again, the significance of these Head and Shoulders patterns is when you're going from an uptrend to a downtrend, when you lose the uptrend. So the uptrend is higher lows and higher highs, and then you hit the head, and then you see a lower high and a lower low. As soon as you hit the lower low and break this neckline, that's when the trend reverses. But if you are already breaking the higher low pattern to form the right side of the neckline, a lot of that bearish sentiment has already been factored in. So I like the patterns on the Head and Shoulders where the right side maintains a higher low compared to the left side, which it is not doing in this example. And let's see if this Ethereum chart shows it a bit better. So it's more of a double bottom here on the Ethereum chart. But again, I like it better because it has not lost the clear higher low pattern just yet. Whereas if this neckline was down here at 900, it would be a completely different setup for me personally. So that's just some personal perspective in terms of the setups that I like best for the follow through, or I should say for the setups on the Head and Shoulder patterns that are more likely to see follow through depending on how they are set up on their formation. So let's now get into some questions, and maybe I'll look at some other charts here, but checking in. No information on the Doug interview. He didn't acknowledge all of those messages that everybody was nice to send him. So not sure. I mean, he did get a reply from Charlie Lee, so certainly not going to put myself on the same level as Charlie Lee. I can understand he's going to be focusing on that, but we'll see. Maybe once he runs out of other people to talk with, he'll come our way. I would love it. Again, I already made notes in terms of similarities that I was going to draw between poker and technical analysis to help speak his language a little bit. And even if he doesn't do it, I'll make a video with that comparison because I did do some brainstorming and I liked what I came up with. So I'll put that content out eventually, whether it's with him or on our own. We'll see. You're going to give it a little bit more time. Best goats for indicators, Icelandic goats, as well as golden Guernseys, which have to originate in England and usually have papers showing their true bloodline from England. There's Guernseys and then there's golden Guernseys. Some of the other indicators we're working on for the alert system, I want to see something to do with social media. I want to see a social media indicator come out there, and obviously something like, you know, anytime Charlie Lee puts out a tweet, getting an alert, we're working on that. But I want some more complex social media indicators to see when there's a spike in, you know, average volume of messages on a ticker on Twitter. When we see that spike up, that can be an indication that some news is going on or some hype's going on. So something along the social media stage, I want to be looking at that. And then once we get our new website put out here in about a month or so, we're going to get back to focused on generation of new alerts. Inside bars do count the wicks. It's only the wicks that we're concerned with. We're not concerned with the real bodies of the inside bars. Have heard of the Telegram ICO. They raised $850 million. Pretty astounding number. We'll see how it plays out. BTC, it's a very clear 4-hour tightening pattern that broke bullish overnight, and now we have a double top to watch, and there's no red flags for the bulls on the 4-hour time frame unless we break 10,300. So we could pull back tonight to 10,500 and still be just fine with higher lows on the 4-hour time frame established yesterday and overnight. Binance oversold climax alert, we are working on that, and we should have that one out in a week or two. Again, some of these exchanges, their volume data is not really, they're not really friendly with their volume data, so it's a little bit easier on some exchanges with others, but we are definitely working on the names that the exchanges that don't have these alerts, and Binance is going to be the first one that we look to add. Currently, I've been trading less because in this cryptocurrency space, because it's been a slow and steady uptrend, and there have been some nice gains back earlier on in this uptrend. I was doing some overnight swinging, which I do not do very often. but it was a slow and steadier kind of move. So to capture the kind of gains that I wanted, I had to shift my trading style and do a bit more swing trading. But where we stand right now, I'm doing some shorter term trades with smaller term positions. But honestly, I go as a trader. I'm a very agile trader, and I will go where the opportunity is. So right now, the S&P 500 has had great trading opportunity the past 2 weeks. That's where my focus has been. And definitely came, once Litecoin was breaking out, I started focusing on cryptocurrencies again. But I'm constantly going back and forth where I'm saying, okay, today, the setup for Canadian marijuana stocks is favoring oversold bounces on the hourly time frame. I like those setups better than the cryptocurrency setups I'm looking at right now. So I'm focused on Canadian MJ today, and I'm going to keep an eye on crypto and watch for opportunities, but I'm constantly all over the place in terms of things I'm trading from one given day to the next. And definitely have been slowing down cryptocurrency a bit while we've been within this 4-hour equilibrium pattern over the last 2 days. I use Fidelity as a broker to trade the S&P 500 stocks. So how I would walk up stop losses, if I'm using the hourly time frame, if I'm going to use the higher low pattern, I use my stop losses based on the most recent higher low. So while we see a breakout and then we start to consolidate, we just formed a higher low right here. So 10,900, if I'm using a short-term time frame and want to maintain a higher low, my stop loss is going right down beneath that. Now, obviously, the shorter term of time frame you're using for your stop loss level, if we are in an uptrend on the daily chart and you're using the 15-minute or the hourly time frame for your stop loss level, the odds that it's going to break and then recover and see continuation is more likely because we're in a daily uptrend. So we have to keep that factor in mind where if you're saying, okay, we're in a daily uptrend and I want to keep riding this daily uptrend, that means you need to use longer term time frames for your support. So if I was looking to swing trade and didn't want to get stopped out prematurely, I'd be looking at the key 4-hour support of 10,300. And if that's too much wiggle room, if that's too big of a pullback to accept that loss, I would use a smaller position. So I have been using smaller positions on this bull move because I have been swing trading overnight and I wanted more wiggle room to allow myself to stay into these trades overnight. So that's why I use smaller positions to allow myself. Again, if I use half size position to what I normally do, that means I can have twice as much space before my stop loss triggers. And that's the same amount of risk that I would be taking on if I were in a full position. The double top is not bearish at this point. It is a very clear resistance level. It's not bearish unless we lose the 4-hour higher low pattern. So if we pull back to 10,600 and then see a lower high at 11,000 and then a lower low, then we're bearish. But one thing I like as a bull about these double tops is the level is so clear, as I was talking about earlier in this broadcast, the level is so clear of resistance that all traders, regardless of what style you're using, are going to recognize that break is bullish and potentially act on it. Something to note, though, on this daily time frame is the more extended we get in terms of a lack of consolidation, of not seeing 2 red days in a row and a healthy pullback, the less the risk to reward favors reward. So here on day 4 of this bull break, when we were up here at 11,100, that's not great risk to reward due to the lack of consolidation that we've seen in the recent past, looking at 4 big green days in a row. So I'm always factoring in when's the last time we consolidated on some of these time frames, the daily and the 4-hour time frame. And, based on what that answer is, I shift the risk to reward of a certain trade based on that. And so I said in a previous video where, because this daily chart was so extended, I was using 15-minute higher lows. And back earlier on, once we got the daily bull break to the higher high, I was not using the 15-minute time frame for stop losses. I was using longer term, like I said, with smaller positions. But as soon as we got more overextended, that's when I started tightening up my stop losses, assuming that once we do get those signs for consolidation, it's going to play out more significantly on the daily chart with a couple days of follow through, which in this example, we have not seen. We have not seen multiple days of follow through. But again, that's just a way that I get more protective based on how significant the bull follow through has been and when's the last time that we consolidated. Main go-to time frame is the hourly. I like the hourly just in terms of the length of time for my trading style. The hourly, that's my go-to. Right in the middle in terms of, it's not too short term, it's not too long term. I use GDAX for trading crypto. Favorite cryptocurrency for long term, still a big fan of Ethereum. And again, just watching how the next few years are going to play out. Really, the next 5 years, we're going to see some major shifts in the cryptocurrency space in terms of market cap, in terms of real life uses, things like that. The vast majority of the time, I am scaling in and scaling out. But again, that will change in certain conditions. When Litecoin saw huge volume coming in, I was not scaling in and scaling out. I was saying, okay, everybody's FOMOing. There's a ton of bull volume, and I can trade with full positions using market orders in certain conditions and know that there's so much bull volume behind it and so much momentum that it decreases the odds that I'm going to get stuck in a position or have to bail early because of that hype and momentum and volume. Again, volume was the #1 reason I was confident in Litecoin using full positions, entering all at once on key bull breaks and continuation and things like that. So volume was a huge indicator. All right, let's look at ETC. A couple ETC mentions. ETC, give me an exchange. ETC, do you want BTC pairing? Do you want USD? First one to say it gets it. I have not noticed a correlation between the overall stock market and Bitcoin or cryptocurrency that is worth paying attention to at this point, and I'm always looking for it. Looks like we got a few more BTC. So ETC, BTC on, we'll just do Bittrex. Someone said Bittrex. So again, weekly time frame, equilibrium pattern showing up. We've got our high. We've got our low of the pullback, and this one's more developed. This one has bounced back to 50% roughly. So let's put our line at where we've topped out. More than 50% of this pullback, we've bounced back. And if you go on the weekly chart of all of the names that we just looked at, for Bitcoin to bounce back 50%, that would be about 14,000. That's the target that I'm looking at. So none of these names had bounced as significantly as ETC in terms of forming a potential lower high on this equilibrium pattern. So right now on the that's actually the daily chart. That's actually very interesting. The daily chart looks a lot like the weekly charts on a lot of these other names, but we can still use the pattern the same way in terms of looking for an equilibrium. High, low, we're looking for a lower high to form. We'll be confident that our daily lower high has formed as soon as this 4-hour time frame loses a higher low pattern. And right now, the previous consolidation, we haven't really consolidated much since this bounce off of 301 on ETC BTC here. So we are getting the bull cross of these exponential moving averages on the 4-hour, and we will likely need to consolidate sooner rather than later and establish a new higher low because, again, every single candlestick off this low is a higher low. We haven't had that period of consolidation to establish a clear higher low at this point. A lot of resistance up at 362 and 364, multiple tops up at this range. So bull's still in control, but need that higher low and higher high to shift this momentum significantly. And if that does not happen, if we start to pull back from here, then this daily chart lower high will be set. But as of right now, where we stand, the bulls are still very much in control. And here's a nice hourly higher low pattern to be watching. As long as these hourly higher lows hold, bulls are still in control. So the must hold level right now, short term, 343 to keep these bulls in control. And you can see they certainly have volume in their favor on this recovery. So overall, bulls in control. Nice bounce off the higher low on the daily time frame. If we lose the hourly higher lows, we'll be looking at the potential that our daily lower high has been set on this bounce. BCH liquidity is the biggest reason that I do not trade it on GDAX. It was a lot harder. I did attempt it, but it was a lot harder to scale in and scale out and to get fills in it without a lot of slippage. US issues with Bitfinex Definitely something we need to keep an eye on. Personally, I would not be comfortable with anywhere near as much capital that I'm currently trading with. If I had to trade with USDT, it just would not make me comfortable. It could be completely legit. It could be a complete scam, but the fact that there's some question around it and, it's such a new thing and a new trading instrument, that would definitely have me extra cautious. And if I were forced to trade and go to USDT, I would probably be trading with about 10% this much capital. Slippage is when things are thinly traded. If something is liquid, that means it has a lot of coins or shares on the bid and the ask, and a little bit of dollar volume doesn't go a long way. If I put $1 million into Bitcoin, it's not going to move anywhere near as much if I put $1 million into Litecoin in terms of, market buy at the ask. So slippage is when there is a lack of liquidity and a lack of coins or shares on the bid and the ask, and a little bit of dollar volume goes a long way. So if I market order with $1 million on Litecoin, I'm going to see a candlestick that forms a big upper wick because I'm going to trigger a bunch of buys and there's going to be slippage to the upside. Whereas if I do a market order of $1 million on Bitcoin, there's not going to be a huge upper wick. It's not going to move the price as much, and I'm going to get filled on my order in a more concise range because there is not slippage, because there is more liquidity. Entry point on Bitcoin. At this point, we need daily consolidation for me to be comfortable. That doesn't mean there's not trades to be had. If we break this double top, there's a short-term trade to be had there. But if you're looking for a swing trade on Bitcoin, I would like to see some consolidation on this daily time frame because, again, the daily time frame has been seeing a higher low every single day for 8 days in a row. I want to see that pattern break. I want to see some healthy low volume consolidation and a higher low to form. Once the 4-hour time frame starts forming lower highs and lower lows, we know daily consolidation is underway. And then once that pattern switches back to 4-hour higher lows and higher highs, we know the bulls are back in control and the daily chart has established a higher low. I do have daily goals, but I will never overtrade if I'm not hitting that goal. I'll just say, okay, we'll go at it again tomorrow. No, it does not mean I am bearish if Bitcoin hits 14,000. It's just a rough general target that I'm keeping an eye on. And if Bitcoin hits 14,000 and then starts forming lower highs and lower lows on the 4-hour time frame, which translates to lower highs and lower lows on the daily time frame, then I'll be bearish Bitcoin. When I say break even, there's a lot of wiggle room there. And, if I make a certain amount of dollars positive or a certain amount of dollars of a loss, I'll still consider that break even. It's not an exact near zero number. So if I'm only losing on fees, I'll still consider that break even because in scenarios where I only gain fees, that, the same amount, I would consider that break even as well. So, I'm not going to count a $20 trade as a win. Grow all kinds of veggies. It's much easier to name the veggies I don't grow than the veggies I do grow. I don't think regulations will kill volatility. I think regulations will get a significant increase in institutional money involved. Definitely take tax into consideration as a short-term trader, and definitely still far outpacing any buy and hold strategy of the big three, even considering short-term capital gains of in excess of 40%. I'm not in any vegetable stocks. When I was into poker, I played online a lot because I was too young to play anywhere else. I was playing in high school, and then I went out in Vegas. I have a good buddy who was the #1 online player in Vegas for a very long time and was just dethroned recently, but he'll be back. But I went out there and lived with him for a few months and played live and played online in Vegas. I liked the tournaments. I like cash games. I like it all. Haven't played in a while because of the amount of time I already spend in front of the computer. Definitely don't want to do that anymore. But again, there are so many. If you are a poker player, you have one leg up. If you are a successful poker player, you have an advantage that you are, I would say, 40% ahead of everybody else in terms of learning technical analysis. Because learning technical analysis, half of it is, the book studying, knowing what the patterns are, knowing what the indicators are. That's the easier part to learn. The harder part to learn is managing your emotions, changing your lifestyle to be beneficial as a trader, and all the psychological baggage that goes along with it. If you're a successful poker player, you've already conquered the vast majority of the psychological aspect. You know risk management, you know how to manage your stack, you know how to control your emotions. So you have a step up. And in my opinion, I never really consciously attributed poker to my success as a trader. But looking back on it, definitely, all of that emotion, the feeling that you get when you're in a big bluff and your heart's racing, but you're not moving at all. I used to feel that when I was in big trades. If I was in a big trade or playing an oversold bounce, my heart would start racing, and that has since been controlled over the years of experience. But it is the exact same. There are so many similarities between poker and technical analysis. And again, it all comes down to putting yourself in favorable positions where you don't know what's going to happen. If you're playing poker, you don't know what the turn card's going to be, but you know what the odds are that it's going to be a diamond or it's going to be a heart based on the cards and the information that you have. So based on the information that I have as a trader, I know what's more likely to happen, whether, if we're seeing lower highs and lower lows, I know it's more likely we're going to stay bullish, or if that pattern breaks, I know it's more likely we're going to see the bulls show up. So just like poker, you try and put yourself in a favorable position where the odds are in your favor to win the hand. You do that in technical analysis and trading every single time. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. It's about nap time o'clock. I am not a vegan. I go back and forth. I definitely don't eat lots of meat, but I'm not a very strict kind of vegan, where there are definitely instances, like on the farm, if I'm raising the chickens and I'm taking care of the chickens and I know how they're being treated, I'm going to eat their eggs. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Certainly enjoy the live streams, and we will be back and at it again tomorrow. Not with a live stream. I do live stream every day during the regular trading week, but that's for members, and that's based on stocks and crypto and commodities and all that fun stuff. But I'll be back with the normal daily videos tomorrow. Thanks again for everybody. Remember to continue doing good things. I do publish my charts. Just answering a question, I publish my charts on TradingView every morning. I do the big three and publish some charts and do good things. I've been brainstorming with Jason in terms of, some future outlooks, and I would love 5 years down the road to have a nonprofit organization called Do Good Things, where traders combine funds to, benefit local communities, nonprofits, things like that. So that's definitely a goal that I now have in terms of what to be looking forward to in the future. That is one good thing that I will certainly share with everybody once it develops more. So appreciate you all. Have a great night.